Okay, I think we're ready to go. Ron said we're ready to go, so we're ready to go. Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see you all here. It's the 449th day of the second Trump administration. Somebody reminded me last week that I forgot, or last time that I forgot to mention where we were. So that's where we are, and we have 1,012 days left of this waking nightmare. There are so many things we could be talking about today. The war in Iran, the increase in gas prices, booming inflation, the doubt and fear that come along with it. We could talk about South Carolina's new abortion bill, S 1095, that picks up where S 323 left off, adding 30-year criminal penalties, classifying mifepristone and other drugs as controlled substances, and removing the already extremely limited exceptions for rape and incest. We could talk about Trump's unending efforts to corrupt, if not destroy, the free and fair elections that fuel our democracy, the envy of the entire world. Last week, I was speaking to somebody who had attended a precinct training meeting organized by the GOP. Do not ask me why. I was speaking to somebody who had been to a GOP training program. I didn't know. But she told me that the entire time was spent learning how to hand count ballots. Because as she reported, the instructor said, we won't be using those election machines anymore. I'm sure this is a goal of the MAGA GOP, but even here in deep red South Carolina, I don't see that happening. Last week, Conway Belangia, former election director for Greenville County, assumed his new position as the state election director. And I have known Conway for several years, and if there's one thing I am certain of, and my friends in the League of Women Voters know this as well, is there is nothing more important to him than protecting the sanctity of our elections. It gives me hope. Absolutely. It gives me hope, and I hope it gives you some hope too, that our sensitive election files will not be sent to the Department of Justice unless the Supreme Court orders it. We could talk about the SAVE Act. That's one of my favorites. The final step in a concerted effort to suppress women's rights to vote, or for that matter, any role in society outside of that as a handmaid. While its passage in the Senate seems unlikely at the moment, our state house has a similar bill, House Bill 3628, which is jam-packed with draconian changes, including paper poll books. That's a great idea. At all polling places, requiring hand-marked ballots, and hand counting would be mandated. If I dumped 1,000 pennies on that table and had you count them, if you did it 4 times, you'd get 4 different results. Hand counting is a joke. It also requires, and I love this, that the list of registered voters be free and accessible to any elector, which I looked up and is just basically a registered voter. So you could request the state's list of registered voters, which I just find stunning. So far, this bill is languishing in committee. We could talk about the ICE cooperation legislation, S 4764, which is currently in the Senate Judiciary Committee, having passed the House. This bill requires law enforcement throughout the state that has a jail or detention center to cooperate with ICE. It takes decisions about how municipalities run their law enforcement operations out of their hands, with the state legislators instead telling them what to do. Of course, what else is new when we tell doctors how to treat patients and teachers what to teach and how to teach it? However, we can't talk about any of these things because we have a full boat today with a number of primary candidates speaking, plus an important program on the reform of criminal justice in our state. So we're going to have to put those aside for a while. But I will send out an email after the meeting with the links to talking points on these bills, as well as a list of state legislators to call or write letters to. So I appreciate, I'd love to do that in this meeting, but I appreciate it if you guys would do this on your own, get groups of your friends together to write letters, make phone calls, and let them know how you feel about these bills. The new abortion bill, 1095, has a hearing tomorrow. I don't know if we'll be able to muster a group to go to that. It's at 8:30 in the morning. So, but if you guys are in or around Columbia and looking for some way to spend your day, that would be a good one. Last week, we received an email from Ashlyn Prio about the need for $7,200 to pay for medically necessary abortions for two South Carolina women. Ashlyn was one of our speakers last year, and now we face another year of uncertainty with a fresh abortion bill, 1095, introduced just in time to potentially be rammed through the end of the session. We were happy to be able to contribute to the need, but we felt we wanted to do more. So the board voted to make the Palmetto Abortion Fund our 50/50 this month. We hope you will be generous. There are cards on your tables with QR codes. There will be a piece in the donkey's tail with a link, and we'll post on socials as well. This organization is saving women's lives. And to tell you more about that, we've invited Christina Glang, the group's storyteller, which I think is the coolest job title I've heard lately, to speak to you for a couple moments. Christina?
Hello. So my name is Christine Glang. I live in Simpsonville, and I'm actually somebody who received financial assistance from Palmetto State Abortion Fund. If you watch WYFF, I was interviewed twice last year, so we could probably send the links if you want to see those. But my story thankfully ends on a happy note. But in October of 2024, I had my 8-week ultrasound to find out that my pregnancy was non-viable. And I basically, according to my doctor, was going to have to wait 11 days to receive a second ultrasound to basically prove my pregnancy stopped growing in order to receive miscarriage treatment. So I either was going to have to wait to pass a pregnancy on its own, which I've done that once before I had my daughter, and I didn't want to go through that again. And I also didn't want to wait 11 days because I knew how dangerous that was going to be. I was already carrying dead fetal tissue inside of me for 3 weeks, and I didn't want to wait another 11 days. So, because of that, the next day, my husband and I flew to Virginia so I could get a DNC. I reached out to Palmetto State Abortion Fund for assistance, and they basically said, let us know what clinic you're going to, how much money you need, like we'll get you taken care of. And they did, and it made a huge difference. I will say, thankfully, I now have my son who is 6 months old, and he is the cutest little boy, like smiley baby with his little fuzzy head. And my daughter, who is now 4, is obsessed with being a big sister. Last year, when WYFF interviewed me, the first one was January of last year, before I knew I was pregnant with my son. And I talked about basically like how I was denied miscarriage treatment because of current South Carolina law. And then I was interviewed again. I think I was 39 weeks and like a couple of days because it was right before S323 was going in a subcommittee. So I was not able to be at the State House for that. But my story was still out there from WYFF, and I'm very grateful that they interviewed me. So with 1095, as you can tell, we definitely have a need for funding for Palmetto State Abortion Fund. I know my situation, I am very grateful that I have a happy ending for it, but there's a lot of women who don't. I also have some close friends who have gone through something similar, have had to wait 11 days and because they were unable to travel out of state. So just want to say thank you for those of you who do contribute or are thinking of contributing. It makes a huge difference, even if it's, $5, $10. And spreading the word on social media also helps as well too. But just wanted to be able to share my story, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Christina. Christina is just an avatar for hundreds, thousands of women who have to face these circumstances. So get your cameras out, get your phones out, scan that QR code, and let's help them out. We have a big program today. We're going to hear from 5 candidates. We will take them in alphabetical order, and each will have 3 minutes to speak. Roxanne will be the timekeeper. When she raises her hand, just like that, that means you have 30 seconds left, which was about when I'm going to start crawling around over here. So in other words, wrap it up. We will not take questions individually, but we have allocated time for a Q&A after all the candidates have finished. So as always, write your questions on the index cards on your table, indicate who it's for, and raise your hand. Somebody will come around and pick them up from you. Next month, we have the remainder of the 2026 primary field, including Jermaine Johnson and Billy Webster, the two other gubernatorial candidates, Annie Andrews and Kyle Freeman, the two other senatorial candidates, and 9 other state house and county council candidates. So that's going to be a biggie you are not going to want to miss. And the state chair, Crystal Spain, will be our featured speaker. So you're going to want to be here for that one. I will be watching on the Zoom. So don't mess it up, Parma. Yeah. Okay, so here we go. Caroline Avinger is running for SC House 24. Caroline?
Full disclosure, allergies, and I'll just leave it there. My name is Caroline Avinger, and I am running for South Carolina House District 24. I grew up in Sumter, and I've lived in Greenville for over 25 years with my husband and our 2 daughters. I love South Carolina. This state, its schools, its churches, its communities have shaped me and have shaped how I've been able to raise my children here. And I started out in the classroom as a public school teacher in Spartanburg District 4, as well as in Georgetown County. And now I have my own business where I do leadership coaching for emerging leaders and established leaders primarily in business. But one of the things that has come out of that is the importance of strong leadership, whether that is in the classroom, whether it is in the workplace, or whether it is in government. And it is one of the things that is pushing me into this campaign at this time. And the other thing is my daughters, because I have told them their entire lives that if you have a problem with something and you're sitting around complaining about it and not doing anything about it, then you're basically just whining. And I realized after years of being very upset with how government is handling life at large, whether that's at the state level or, God forbid, the national level, I was complaining, but I wasn't getting anything done other than waiting around for someone to step up and run. And when I realized that I wasn't providing a solution myself, I decided to step up and be that solution for District 24. My priorities involve education because as a teacher, a former teacher, I understand what happens in the classroom and what comes down out of Columbia don't always match up, and there's a real reality gap there. Healthcare, as a private business owner, I pay for my own insurance. My insurance went up 130% in January, not on the bingo card for 2026. And then also affordability, housing affordability. I look at my children and I know that they're not going to be able to come back to live in Greenville because they can't afford it. And looking at the affordability housing crisis that we have, not just in low-income housing, but for our first responders, for our teachers. Those are the people who are not able to live here because they can't afford to live here. And I look at the person I am seeking to replace, and it is someone who does not listen to the constituents anymore, who has gotten comfortable in his seat in the state house. And that state is not his, and it will not be mine. It is yours. And when I am down in Columbia, I will be there to be responsive, to be accountable, and to do the work that needs to be done to serve everyday South Carolinians, especially in District 24. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Okay, next up, like I said, will be Mullins McLeod, candidate for governor.
3 minutes is a tough assignment, so I'm going to go quick. All right. I come from a family who's known 2 lines of work for more than 100 years. That is law and public service. Public service in my family means that to whom much is given, much is expected in return. The way I was raised, there's no trust more sacred than the public trust. There's no work more important than the public's work. That is a leadership that has been missing in our state. Here is the truth, folks. The people of South Carolina, all of us now, I don't care where you live. I don't care how much money you have in your pocket. I don't care the color of your skin. All of us are trapped in an incredibly corrupt political system. We do not govern ourselves. This thing known as democracy was very simple by design. We, the people, elect one of us to go to office to serve our interest. Very simple. And we get the leadership we need at the ballot box for free. That is the beauty of democracy. But we do not govern ourselves. We are literally governed by greed. We are a state and a nation that is divided. Greed is the enemy that stands in the valley. Now, here's the truth. The politicians on the left and the politicians on the right are not servant leaders. You see, my heart belongs to God and my voice belongs to you, the people. Instead of confronting the enemy, greed itself, selfish politicians use the for-profits' money to stay in office, which is why they then do the for-profits' bidding once they're in office. And we, the people, pay the price. I could speak for hours about all the symptoms of the political corruption that is holding our state back. Okay? But I only have 3 minutes. One clear example. Every person's power bill in this room is higher every month because of political corruption. You see, the power companies, they got more money. They're one of the deepest pockets in American political history. They have a near monopoly, okay? They got this legislature to pass the Rate Stabilization Act last legislative session that literally gave the power company a personal guarantee of profitability where they can jack up our rates in order to satisfy their profits. Servant leaders like me tell the power company, your money is no good here. I represent the people and I'm not going to do your bidding. If you want to sell power to people of South Carolina, you're going to sell power in this narrow window of pricing because that's a fair market value of your services. And real quick, the abortion ban, it is another symptom, classic symptom of political corruption. Here's what's going on. One, if that bill comes to my office, I'll be our state's next governor. I will veto that bill. But let me tell you what's going on so you can confront this enemy. There's a light and a dark side to every moon. This is coming from the darkest side of the darkest moon. There are far-right groups who have a lot of money, and they want to impose their will on the majority of the people of South Carolina, despite the fact that that violates our desires, our interests, and our needs. But here's what the Republican establishment is doing. They are doing their bidding because of the money. And they think they'll never be held accountable because they have an R by their name. Well, I'm here to tell you this November is not just election day, it's judgment day. And change is coming. Thank y'all.
Hello, and thank you. Thank you, Laura. Thank you for everybody that's here and welcoming so that I can introduce myself. My name is Justin Sanders. Born and raised here in Greenville, South Carolina. I have parents that went to Bob Jones University. That's where they met. It was on easy background, though. They separated, and I went to 10 different schools in 12 years in this public education system. I know the difficulty of life in South Carolina. I joined the military, spent 5 years, 2 years in Iraq, front lines, lost friends. That is on all of us as citizens of this country. I came back. I learned the value of education, went to Greenville Technical College, transferred to University of South Carolina, and got a degree in political science, where I learned the theory of politics. And in theory is perfect, practice is not. And that's why I want to second what Mr. McLeod said and what Ms. Avinger said. It's important that we take responsibility for our actions. Currently, I was a former teacher as well in Title I schools. I was at Tanglewood the year prior to the horrific shooting that happened there. I worked in the middle school alternative programs with students that come to school hungry, that have no resources. I volunteer with Big Brother, Big Sister, where their caretakers didn't get them the paperwork for their free meals. That should be done for every student in Greenville, in South Carolina, excuse me. Currently, I am a traveler, a Uber driver, and a landlord. I work with the people, I volunteer with the people, and I know what they are struggling with. The affordability crisis is out of control. While running, I have come across a particular question that resonated with me, and it is, what are your unique qualifications to make you a representative for House Seat 24? In my wrestling with this question, I've came up with 3 particular words: empathy, incentives, and energy. I empathize with people like Christina who have to struggle to get health care. I empathize with the poor. I have been there. I am. As a white male in America, I am way richer than most, and I acknowledge that, but it's luck, and it should be for everybody, not just white men. I have no incentive to stay in power. I have no incentive to make money in Columbia. I'm here for you, as a voice for you and you alone. My policy agenda is redistricting, and I think that is the main issue. Get rid of identity politics so that we can have a conversation. There's so much more. I look forward to talking with you and talking about how South Carolina can move into the future. Thank you.
And finally, we have Sylvia Wright. Sylvia is running for Superintendent of Education.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sylvia Wright, and I am your candidate for State Superintendent of Education here in South Carolina. I'm a mom and a grandma, so I understand the need and the want and the passion for your kids and grandkids to have the best educational experience and have access to that. I'm also a teacher. I know how it feels to have a student in the classroom who's misbehaving, and you've done everything that you can, and you expect the leadership to step in and support you. I know how that feels. I know how it feels to try to survive on a minimum salary as a new teacher. I've had to eat oatmeal. I've had my lights cut off. So I understand. South Carolina ranks 43rd in the nation when it comes to education. Our children, our families, our schools, our teachers, our communities deserve better. When I first started running, the question I would get is, why are you running? And of course, I talk about my grandson and how what I want for him, I want for your children and your grandchildren. But the question I get now is, what qualifies you to be superintendent of education? And I'm like, I love that question because there are 3 things, 3 key things to fulfill the role of state superintendent. It's leadership, management, and judgment. Leadership, building relationships, building capacity in others. Management, managing funding, initiatives, and there's another word, because there's funding, initiatives, and like programs to help students. And of course, judgment, looking at the data. And I'm not just talking about testing data. I'm talking about having conversations with the teachers, the students, the families. What are the needs? How can we improve the system? And these are things I've already done. I've been a classroom teacher. I've been a department leader. I've been a school coordinator. I've been an instructional coach, and I've been a district coordinator. I resigned from my district coordinator position to run full time because that's how committed I am to improving public education here in South Carolina. And we can do it. Yes. Together, we can elevate public education from 43rd to 1st. My top priority is early childhood education. Four-year-olds, every four-year-old in this state will have access to early childhood education regardless of income. Because that's the foundation. We have to start there. That is our best return on investment. For every dollar we invest in early childhood education, the return is $7 to $13. So please join with me. Visit my website, Wright2026sc.com. I need volunteers. I need donations. And most importantly, I need your vote on June 9th. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any questions? I don't see any cards up, so. There's a. Thank you, Parma. Raise your, what do you need? Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay, well, we'll start with this question. Then this is for Justin. Person writes, thank you for stepping forward to serve. I noticed that in 2018 you ran as the 4th congressional district, congressional district as a Republican. And I'd like to hear more about what influenced your decision to run as a Democrat in this race.
So in 2018, I was a moderate voice in the Republican Party. That is correct. My understanding of politics is above many of the lay. Unfortunately, I don't want to seem like I know better. But I know how politics should work. And in South Carolina, at the time, the Republican Party and still has a stranglehold on politics. Trump then was terrible. He was mediated, but he was terrible. He was a terrible choice. I never liked him, and I thought I could be a moderate, which I was. If you go back and listen to anything that I said, it was about bringing the same policies here that I believe in today. I considered myself a progressive in the Republican Party. Now, looking at what Trump is doing, it is the most devastating thing we could see for our nation. The Democratic Party is now the Burkean Conservative Party, meaning if you understand that Edmund Burke looked at the French Revolution and said institutions are not evil. Institutions must be protected. The Democratic Party is the party to protect the American democracy and the American way of life. So, and that is my main issue, is focusing on redistricting laws to get people to come together and have conversations about politics, grow our civic engagement, and keep moving forward.
Well, this seems to be the day for challenging questions. Mullins, one of our members would like you to address your incident involving arrest for public intoxication.
Thank you, whoever asked that question. I could talk to y'all for an hour, and it would blow your mind. Okay? First off, my hands are still tied somewhat by a very corrupt political establishment with regard to what I can and cannot talk about in my unlawful arrest. Okay? But here's what I can share with you. Number one, no drugs, no alcohol, period. Number two, I will be able to prove before this is all over that those police officers committed a felony act by taking my freedom in violation of my God-given and constitutional rights to be in a public place for any reason or no reason at all. I've come to understand that all of this is by his very careful plan and design. You see, these Republicans talk about freedom. I know what it feels like to be treated as less than human. I know what it feels like to be in the belly of the beast. I know what freedom means because I've had it taken from me. Now, there are two sides of my arrest. There's my side, and then there's a law enforcement side. Okay, and I want to explain that to y'all. On my side of the arrest, this is what I learned about myself. My whole career, I started figuring out early on that my ability to see the truth and speak the truth, share it with other people so they can find the truth themselves, was a very serious talent. That does not mean I'm smart. The left side of my brain does not work. I cannot do math without a calculator. I got a D in every science class I ever took. But the right side of my brain, the ability to see the truth and speak the truth, is pretty doggone good. And I started giving the Lord thanks because my career took off. Here's the truth. My track record representing other people's interest, being their voice when it matters the most, is unmatched in our state's history. In 250 years, no one has accomplished in courtrooms all across our state what I have accomplished. The last 10 cases I've tried have been 7-figure verdicts, 2 of those cases 8-figure verdicts. What I learned this summer was that talent was in fact a spiritual gift. And here is the God's honest truth. He ignited a storm in my life, and now I understand why. Although my training to be your voice, to represent your interest, was complete, my preparation was not. Because this summer, although I believed in God, and although my heart had always been bent towards justice, my heart did not belong to him. It belonged to me. What you see in the back of that police car, I've had a righteous fire that burns in here my whole dadgum life. When I brought suit against the Federal Bureau of Investigation on behalf of the prisoners and Mother Emanuel who were killed by a white supremacist, let me tell you, nobody said I would win. Nobody said it was a good idea. But this fire burns hot. And because of it, I poured myself into that case. And 5 years later, those parishioners got justice that many people did not want to see happen. It was one of the most important pieces of social justice in our state's history. But here's the truth. Prior to that storm, I relied on myself for my strength. That was my shortcoming. I'm not strong enough to control this righteous fire. I fell down. That's what you saw in the back of that police car. But 70 days after that unlawful arrest, I surrendered. And do you know what happened as soon as I surrendered my heart to him? He commissioned me, literally, for service. And you know the task that he assigned me, I can prove in any courtroom in America beyond the shadow of a doubt. I can prove it in any house of worship, the shadow of a doubt. The task that he assigned me, unmistakably, was to be the voice that you have long deserved and you have not yet had. And so while that video may be uncomfortable for some people, I got to tell you, I don't have a problem with it. And here's why. That fire's still there. The profanity is not, okay? But the fire's still there. And that night was the most important part of my journey on this side of the soil. Because without that night, I would have never known that he had literally a divine purpose and plan for my life. And so I'm grateful for that storm. And I'm sorry to any of you that had to listen to the profanity. I apologize for that. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you very much. Thank you. As long as we have a gubernatorial candidate here, let me ask this one. A little shorter this time, though. Is it legal for the governor to decide to partner with an organization like Turning Point without the vote of the public? First, gubernatorial decision.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what it means by partner with. But generally speaking, no, the role of government is not to partner with for-profits or nonprofits, okay? The role of government is to run itself for the benefit of its people, and that's its only job. But what you're seeing is another form of political corruption. There's some people who think it's good politics to align themselves with certain organizations. Well, here's the bottom line, folks. The truth don't need nothing. The truth stands on its own. And when we have a governor whose heart belongs to God, whose voice belongs to the people, I don't need to coordinate with any organizations. You are who I coordinate with all day, every day, and twice on Sunday. That literally is what servant leadership is all about. That is what has been missing in our state for longer than I've been alive. And that's why I'm running for governor. The power in the state belongs to those of us who live in the light and walk with the truth. It does not belong to those who operate in the shadows. And that's what's been happening for more than 50 years. And it's going to stop.
So Sylvia, I've got four questions for, no, 3 questions for you. So you might as well just come on up here. Sure. Answer that one first.
Okay. So the question was the role of the government, the partnership with the Turning Point. It's called Club America. I don't know if you guys saw that on Friday. So they told us, or the current superintendent was indoctrination. We should not have indoctrination in our schools. And now look at this. Club America, PragerU. That's indoctrination at its finest. So as state superintendent of education, my job isn't to try to indoctrinate. My job is to grow students and make sure that they're successful for the future. So that's going to be my goal as state superintendent. I do not teach Republican kids. I do not teach Democrat kids. I don't teach independent, green, whatever. I teach kids. And that's our first responsibility, teaching them, growing them, and making sure they're ready for the future. So I am totally against Club America, any type of political affiliation, any club, because public schools, that's a neutral place. It's not a political agenda breeding ground like Club America. So that's my response to Club America and that partnership.
There.
Fired up. I love education.
I see that. Okay. Do you have a master's degree?
Several. So quickly, I'll go through that. I received my bachelor's of education in middle grades education. When I first started teaching, I realized I was not meeting the needs of all the kids in my classroom. So I went back to school and received a master's of education in divergent learning from Columbia College. It taught me the strategies to help meet the needs of the different kids in my classroom. As I moved up in leadership, because like I told you, department leaders started moving up, I realized there's a leadership problem. So I went to the Citadel. I received my master's in educational leadership. I continued at the Citadel, received my specialist in education, which actually prepared me to be a superintendent of education. I'm currently working on my doctor of education at the University of South Carolina in systems, thank you, in systems improvement and innovation, because that's what we need to improve our system here in South Carolina. My focus, though, is going to be on special education, the literacy rate of middle school students who receive special services in the rural area. So that's what my research is on.
And each of these masters took more than like 2 weeks, right? Just checking to be sure. Okay. Your last question for you is, we'd like to know your stand on book banning.
Oh.
Stand back.
So, everyone's familiar with Regulation 43-170. Okay, if not, that regulation is what the current superintendent put in place for the state to take over the book banning. because there was a system in place in our local school districts. They had that control, but one parent, because she's with Moms for Liberty. Right. So that's why with that 43-170, it's under the guise of trying to protect our children from, things that inappropriate. And again, you guys, I don't want my kids looking at inappropriate things either. So I'm not sitting here saying that I'm all for, no rule at all. What I'm saying is it's not the state's job to ban books. It's the local superintendents, the local school boards, that's their job. And so as superintendent, I'm returning that to the local districts.
Okay, Caroline. What policy measures will you craft to support your affordable housing priority, excuse me?
There are actually a lot of policies and mechanisms out there already to assist with affordable housing. They're not being used or they're not being publicized. There are ways for people to move into new developments where they receive certain subsidies because the developers are required to provide affordable housing at certain levels, and not just a studio apartment, an actual apartment for a family, for example. And part of what I want to accomplish when I get to the State House is making sure that those mechanisms are actually being used. One of the things that I have a real issue with legislation that is being discussed and time that is being taken in the State House now is on a lot of the nuisance proposals that are being put out there, things that do not do anything for the people of this state. Instead, they're furthering a very far-right agenda, and it's just propping up those people who are putting them out, that they're the loud voices. They're the ones that are trying to divert attention from the actual work that we need to be doing in Columbia to make affordable housing more prevalent for the people in our state, for our first responders, for our teachers, for our children. Because my child's already saying she's coming back to live in the basement, which is not going to happen. But there are things out there that we can be doing now that are efficient, that are effective, that are not taking place because we're so busy discussing what 11 by 14 poster we're going to put on the wall, and are we going to teach that or not? Or are we going to name highways after people who have done nothing for our state? That's where our time is being spent. So as I start crafting policies, when I get to the State House, some of them are going to be to use the things we already have, but others are going to be to cut through the nonsense to get to those things, those actions that we can be taking to make life easier, more sustainable, more affordable for everyday South Carolinians.
This question is for all the candidates, so you can probably just stand in place. All of you seem to have a big enough voice for that. Someone who does a lot of canvassing and working in the community says, the main question I get is why I should register or vote when I cannot get in touch with my elected officials. And she wants to know, how will you address communication with the people that you represent once elected or reelected? Carolyn, why don't you go first?
That's one of the main reasons I'm running, because I can't get in touch with my legislator. Bruce Bannister. Bruce Bannister. I have emailed, I have made phone calls, and it's crickets. And I'm not the only one. I have talked to so many people across my district who have met with the same response, which is no response. That is unconscionable to me, because when I'm in Columbia, I am not working for myself. I am working for you. And part of that is listening to the people I represent. Now, in terms of the logistics of that, I will go ahead and tell you organization, paper organization, that sort of thing is not a strong suit. So I will be hiring someone to help me with the logistics. But the bottom line is, if you have a question, if you have a concern, I promise you, your voice matters and I will respond. because that is one of the things, and we are seeing it not just at the legislative level. I mean, I call some people in Washington quite frequently, and I can assure you I've never gotten a response from them. But when you are as close as a legislator is to the people he or she represents, then you better get your bottom out there and start listening and talking to the people you represent face to face. Be present, be accountable, be responsive.
So I've been traveling all 46 counties for almost 2 years. And the reason why I travel, thank you. I have like 128,000 miles on my car. When I purchased the car, I never thought I'd be running for office either, but that's a whole nother story. But the reason why I highlight that is I wanted to hear the voices of everybody, the elected officials, the community, the parents, the teachers, because I want to build relationships, because that's what it's going to take. All of us working together to elevate public education. And that doesn't just stop after I'm elected. I will continue to hold town hall meetings, listening sessions. I have one this afternoon, actually, listening to students who are parents who have students with special needs, because the school district has been ignoring them. And that's why people are turned off from voting, because people have been ignoring them and not listening to them. But I'm a different leader. I want to hear what you have to say, because in order to improve, we have to know what's happening in these districts. And the current superintendent, I can guarantee you, has not been around to hear the voices of the people. We're throwing money at things, but we need to have conversations and dialogue so we can be intentional about how we're spending the taxpayers' money. So my response to that is holding town halls and making sure I'm in communities, not just to get elected during election season, but all throughout the years, being there and showing up.
Justin?
I really appreciate this question because that is at the forefront of my ideas. I thought about the $10,000 paycheck that comes with being a representative, and the idea since I don't need it, I would put it towards a website to communicate with the constituents of District 24. How it would work with the security, all of that would be hashed out. But the idea is to be a delegate representative. There are 3 types of representation: delegate, trustee, and politico. A trustee is like your senator, somebody that puts it on their own shoulders, who decides for themselves according to what their ideas and knowledge is. A delegate is somebody that listens to the constituent, who mirrors the constituency. And to let you know, that can cut both ways. If a policy is more popular, and it's a Republican policy, the representative should vote positively for it if it's what the constituency wants, and vice versa. If it is a Democratic policy that most people want, the representative should vote yes in favor of that as well. It depends on the constituents. So I would love to create a website that verifies your residence and your voting eligibility, and pushes out all the bills that are coming up for vote, and asking constituents, how do you feel about this particular bill? And as it gets moving and up and running, hopefully it's a witness, an example for what success looks like, so that, again, it's about creating positive feedback loops to create voter engagement, to make responsibility, to help us take on the functions of government, because we are the people. That's what it's for. Thank you for the question.
Okay, I want to thank all the candidates for being with us today. Hope you'll be able to stay around a bit afterwards, because I'm sure some of our members would like to have a conversation with you. I got one quick, really super quick thing that I cannot forget. If you want to be a delegate to the state convention, which is in May 30th, you're going to want to talk to Lynn Ramirez. She's right there. She can sign you up for that. And it's an interesting day. It's worth going to. Okay. So we're a little bit, not a lot behind, but a little bit behind. So I'm going to turn things over to Roxanne for the main program.
I came up with this program after I watched the documentary, The Alabama Solution, which I highly recommend. It's very depressing, but it'll rip your world open as far as what conditions are in the prisons in Alabama, which are very similar to the prisons here in South Carolina. I'm so thrilled that both of these individuals joined us today because they'll give you a full understanding of what we're dealing with. Jerry Blassingame is a founder and CEO of Soteria Community Development Corporation. He endeavors to empower individuals in the community as he advocates for economic and social justice through community and economic development. His passion is assisting individuals who've been incarcerated and helping them to become productive citizens. Jerry's a certified reentry specialist through the Institute of Prison Ministry at Wheaton College. One of his greatest accomplishments was to help pass Expungement Bill H3 209 in South Carolina in 2018. Jerry's also a published author who has a fascinating life story in his book called Reclaimed. Please welcome Jerry Blassingame.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for having me. Again, I'm Jerry Blassingame. I'm so honored to be here today. I am the face of reentry in South Carolina. I served 3.5 years in the Department of Corrections from 1995 to 1999. I am now founder of Soteria Community Development Corporation. For the past 27 years, I've helped over 10,000 individuals to transition successfully out of prison. Our mission is that we advocate for economic and social justice for those and their families who've been impacted by the criminal justice system. And one thing I want to point out is that about 90% of the people who are incarcerated, they will come home. They will be our neighbors. And we need to look out for our neighbors. Our job is to make sure that people get reintegrated back into families. You know, people come to our program because they burn bridges and we provide housing and things like that. But the best place for a person when they return home from prison is back to their families. And with the way our state is with housing and employment and things like that, it's tough, even for the families. I believe that reentry should start at arraignment. When someone gets sentenced, we should already be working on their reentry plan. And, one of the main things that, we talk about is mass incarceration. Mass incarceration right now in America, there are 2.3 million adults and children that are locked up in our jails and prisons right now. 1 in 600 white males have been impacted, 1 in 36 Hispanic males, 1 in 16 black males, 1 in 11 white women, 111 white women, 1 in 45 Hispanic women, and 1 in 18 black women. There are over 70 million people in America right now that have some type of criminal conviction. The lifetime likelihood of a male born after 2001 that will be incarcerated, 1 in 17 white males, 1 in 6 Hispanic males, and 1 in 3 black males. There are over 48,000 things that we call collateral consequences that continue to punish people with criminal backgrounds. 48,000 things, that's in America, but there are 6,000 collateral consequences in South Carolina that still bar people from climbing the economic mobility ladder. When I was released in 1999, I wanted to start Soteria. And one of the things that got me was I could not get a job because of my criminal background. I tried to go back to school to finish my degree in architecture. I had 2 years left to finish my degree, and I could not continue my Pell Grant because of the crime bill that said if you have a drug conviction, you cannot get a Pell Grant. I could have had a rape, I could have robbed somebody, I could have murdered somebody, but I had a drug conviction and I could not get a Pell Grant. I paid money, got loans to go back to school, and I ended up getting a job with a geotechnical engineering firm. And my boss said, "Jerry, you're smart. Let's see if we can get you licensed as an architect." Back then, I could not get licensed in the state as an architect because of my drug conviction. So we're looking at things like fines, lack of transportation, homelessness, no positive support group, minimal job opportunities. All these are what we call collateral consequences. Y'all, it costs $40,429 last year to incarcerate one person for 1 year. The average stay is 5.5 years. We're paying over $222,000. This is from the Department of Corrections website. I didn't make this up. Last year, our count was 17,000 people that were in our prisons, men and women. $698,491,833. That's what it costs, over $500 million to incarcerate men and women in our carceral system in the state. Greenville has been in the top 5 for the last 15 to 20 years of incarcerating more people than any other county in the state. About 135 people return monthly. And a lot of them didn't even get sentenced here. They come back because of the resources we have. So we have a great problem. And we talk about jail beds versus school desk. It costs $40,000 to incarcerate a person for 1 year. Clemson, it's about $40,000 for education there. University of South Carolina is about $39,000. In the College of Charleston, it's $34,000. We're paying a lot more to incarcerate than to educate. When I was released from prison in 1999, I did not get released with a bachelor's degree. I got released with a laundry bag with 2 sets of underwear, a t-shirt, a tube of toothpaste, and a bar of soap. And I didn't even get a bus ticket to the town where I was coming from. So we have a huge problem in South Carolina. And one of the things that we're doing is that we're trying to get people in housing. We have an acronym that describes our services: housing, education, employment, affirmation, and advocacy. That's here. And as mentioned in my bio, the H 3209 was the bill that was passed in 2018. And I want to recognize our great senator here, District 7, Senator Carl Allen. Carl Allen invited me down year after year after year to testify, to make sure, thank you, to make sure that this bill got passed. And, you know, we started in 2004. I think he was in the House then. And by the time we finished, he was a senator. But we worked for 13 years to try to get a felony expungement bill passed. And the very first bill that we tried to get passed was a person with a pardon. In 2004, I received a pardon. I had 11 years parole when I got out. I couldn't get a job. They tried to make me step down from our organization, and I worked with a few people in the state to get a pardon. I found out that a pardon was not expungible. The very first bill that we tried in 2005 was anybody who got a pardon, let's expunge them. And our state senators and House members said, oh no, we want to know what everyone did. But we worked year after year after year to get some type of bill that would be palatable to our state. And Senator Allen worked with the state chamber, the local chamber here, the Midlands chamber, in the chamber down in the Low Country. And we had to flip the bill, and we call it the Workforce Expansion Bill, I think it was the name. You know, we had to, do it. And Senator Allen worked, and I remember at the 9th hour, at the 11th hour, he was running around trying to get, House members and across the party lines to agree to something. After our governor had vetoed this bill, they went back and they overrid the veto. That is a hand clap. So I'm very thankful to be here today. You know, the services that we offer are critical to men and women being out and being able to reintegrate back into their families. And so I'm so thankful. Back in the day when we first started, there were not a lot of players in the game. And the person who's coming behind me will share about some of the things that she's doing to help. We're partners. We work in tandem to work together to make sure that people stay out and get out, and especially those who are there and need to be home with their families. So I'm so thankful to be here. I'll have business cards and I'll have some brochures for those who want to know more about what we do. But I'm very thankful to represent the men and women who are returning home from prison. And 27 years ago, I was one of those. And right now, I'm running an organization that has 32 transitional housing beds. We own 22 low-income housing. We have a wood shop that teach men how to make beautiful reclaimed wood furniture from buildings and barns that would be in the landfill. And I'm proud to say that our organization, we are debt-free because the Bible says to owe no man nothing but to love him. And so we're very thankful that we're able to do this work here in Greenville. So I'm very thankful, and thank you all for having me to speak today.
When Laura sends the follow-up email, she'll give you a link to Soteria. And if you have a chance to go by there and see the beautiful things, you'll be very impressed. And you can also donate to Soteria. Allison Elder is a great example of a young person doing the Lord's work. She co-founded and directs Time Served, a Greenville-based legal aid group serving system impact South Carolinians statewide. Allison's dedicated her entire legal career, both during law school and since, to reentry, release, and civil rights for incarcerated people. Allison earned her JD Magna Cum Laude Order of the Coif and an LLM in International Human Rights Law from Northwestern University's Pritzker School of Law. She's previously served as both a Fulbright Scholar and an Equal Justice Works Fellow. Please welcome Allison Elder.
Wow, thank you all for having me. And I can't tell you what an honor it is to speak after Jerry. I would not be here if it weren't for Jerry. He is a mentor and a friend, and thank you so much. Yeah, give it up for Jerry. I almost feel like I should be running for something, but usually I know what's my platform. But really I'm going to talk about one issue area because I'm usually just racing the clock to try to get my clients out so they can have as much time with their families. Time is so precious, and I think it's something a lot of us take for granted. At Time Served, we provide legal services to people who are currently and formerly incarcerated or who have criminal records in the state of South Carolina. But y'all, at least we think Greenville's lucky because we're located right here. So we serve statewide, but we're actually in the Triune Mercy Center on the 3rd floor. And Jerry gave you, I think, a good idea of what our reentry legal services might look like. It's a lot of record cleaning, family law representation to reunify people with their kids. They've turned their lives around and now they're ready to be back in their children's lives. Driver's license reinstatement. Imagine trying to work in Greenville if you can't legally drive or get back on the road, right? Succeeding on supervision, understanding the requirements, and being able to reintegrate into our community. And that's a lot of what we do as a legal aid. But I thought it would be interesting to share with you all today a little bit more about the release side of our practice. So I'm going to zoom in through a few quick anecdotal stories on who is in our South Carolina prison system right now. And you heard some incredible and appalling data from Jerry about the 17,000 people sitting in our South Carolina prisons. A lot of them were kids at the time of their offense. And in fact, we are one of the states with the highest rates of kids sitting in adult prisons. Now grown men and women, right, but have been in since they were kids and were tried as adults. It's more than 6% of our adult prison population. And I think of one of my parole clients who is one of the longest serving 15-year-olds in our state. And our system failed him fundamentally. So he had an incredibly abusive stepfather who introduced him to cocaine when he was in elementary school. In 7th grade, he says he dropped out. I don't think we should say that 7th graders dropped out because if a 7th grader leaves school, we failed them. And at 15, he made a terrible mistake while strung out on cocaine, and he committed a robbery in which he killed the clerk. And the amount of grief and remorse that he feels is not going to go away or change when he leaves prison, right? That's something he's going to carry with him for the rest of his life. But he's been in for 37 years now. And he's at the age where if he leaves, statistically, we cannot expect him to recidivate. The recidivism rate for folks over 55 is around 2%, and it quickly hits 0. And we have a cruel irony in our state that I like to explain to other lawyers that wonder why we aren't getting more kids resentenced. Has anybody heard about sort of the wave of Supreme Court cases and kids getting to go back to court and have their life sentence overturned and get a term of year sentence? Okay, so there was this big movement towards when you know better, you do better. We know more about how kids' brains work. And so there was movement in the courts towards that. But because we have had parole for later into the 90s than most other parts of the country, a lot of our juvenile lifer clients have parole eligibility. And so parole is the only mechanism for them to be released in our state. In fiscal year 2023, nobody made parole from a life sentence in South Carolina. That was out of around 400 people that went before the board. Okay, so I'm happy it's not all bleak. 2024, we got a woman out, an elderly woman serving life, and a couple other folks started to make it in fall of that year. Last year, we got 3. That felt like a coup. I thought it was like a prison break. And this year, we have had 4 so far. There are a lot of women in our prisons, and it's really the fastest growing demographic in prisons, especially Black women. And we know that women in prison, a large majority of them have experienced intimate partner violence or domestic violence or sexual assault, vast majority of them, all trauma survivors. And that's also very true of like male population of prison, and there's a lot of trauma. But specifically in women prison, you have a lot of people whose crimes arose out of their abusive relationship, whether they ended up harming their abuser or they're in a coercive situation. And we have, South Carolina, hand of one is hand of all. Anybody heard that? And so now they're criminally liable for the criminal acts of their abuser. And one of my clients has one of the 10 longest serving women in our state. She's spent more than 4 decades in South Carolina Department of Corrections. And when she was 19 years old, she got into this relationship, and at first it seemed okay. And things started to go really badly. And he was keeping her in closets, and he was doing things to her that were unspeakable. And her mom, like any good mom, was trying so hard to get her out of this relationship. She got her arrested for minor drug possession, bonded out, right back with the abuser. She is still sitting in prison today for the criminal acts of her abusive partner, who now maintains that he was solely liable and thinks she should be released. Other states have moved towards opening courtroom doors in these cases because what we find is that oftentimes abuse was not considered. So when my client tried to explain to her lawyer at that time, and picture, she's very young when this is happening, and she's saying, well, these are the things he did to me, and she's trying to talk about it. And the lawyer said, that's not our theory of the case. That's irrelevant. This is a tragic love story. So it wasn't presented in court. Other states, including Oklahoma, not the bluest state, Georgia, just last year, are passing what's called Domestic Violence Survivor Justice Act to reopen courtroom doors and get cases like my clients back before a judge. And I know you want to give me a time warning because I know I'm good. Okay. There are so many. If y'all name a social justice issue, I promise it intersects with the criminal legal system. Okay. Medical release. 14% of our prison population is over the age of 55. And 60 years old, 70 years old in prison doesn't look like 60 or 70 years old out here on the street. People age faster. The life expectancy is a lot shorter. And just this month, we lost one of our clients who was a veteran, who was loved. He had family members. He had a niece that wanted him to come home. And he was at a special medical facility where our taxpayers we pay around $400 a day to house somebody who is elderly, and in this case, he had had strokes. They have to have 2-point restraints at this facility. He did not have enough limbs. So if you don't have enough limbs, it means he's chained at the waist, right? We do medical release representation, and this is an area where I think we can also be talking about fiscal responsibility, because the cost can be offset. We can send folks, and what other states do is allow people to return to their families, allow people to go to skilled nursing facilities, right? There's places where they can provide appropriate and humane care. And there are some restrictions and ways in which even our agency regulations have narrowed it. We have a unique provision that's a sponsor requirement in our state. You have to have an in-state family member that can take you in. So let's say somebody's family member wants to, but the person requires skilled nursing, or let's say their family lives in North Carolina or what have you. A lot of folks are excluded from medical release based on this regulation that we're hoping we can change just through administrative advocacy. We have 2 strikes, 3 strikes laws, which create some of those news stories you see. If you see like, oh, they're serving life for stealing $80, right? Those headlines where you go, what? And one of my clients is serving life for stealing sodas from a carport. But these are decisions that solicitors' offices make, and they can unmake them. And we learned that because one of the low country counties actually did that to write one of these cases. And so when we think about supporting our clients, we're focused on creative advocacy and opening doors that might not otherwise be available. And finally, we're expanding our work. So we have always had innocence cases because some people that are in prison are there for things that they didn't do. And now we're growing, and so our reentry and release branches are going to be complemented by a true innocence unit. That is so important because we only have 11 registered exonerations since 1989 in South Carolina, and none of them were women, which also we're going to fix. So it's not all bleak. We have incredible community partners. We have amazing social service organizations in our state that work with folks in reentry, which means that we're able to bring people home because we know that they will be cared for and have the services that they need. And if you're interested in learning more about what we do, I have postcards, and you can check out our website. We're called Time Served. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Jerry and Allison. Really wonderful information. Questions, cards in the air. Okay, this one is for Jerry. I feel like a game show host sometimes. What's the correct answer to this question, Jerry? How many prisons in Staten Island are privately owned? Ding, 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 ding. Oh, sorry. No, did I say Staten Island? If you know the answer to that question, I'm sorry, South Carolina. No more drinking in the morning. Oh, okay. 0. Anybody else want to try a question? No, nobody?